What's up, guys? This is Nick, Team Evans here. This is the electrical wiring video. I am not a master electrician. I learned most of this from watching other resources. I did run it by my stepdad, who is a master electrician, and he made some last changes. So I'll show you guys what he changed when we were doing the final wiring diagram as I run you through my drawing. So this video will have a wiring diagram. I'll show you the parts I used, and we'll be done with it. This is just a real quick video. So hope you guys enjoy. I feel like the first part of any project is the layout. Figuring out the dimensions, where you want all of your items. In this particular case, you can see I had a list of all my electronics and utilities, how they'd work together, so I could make the wiring diagram. So here's the list of the electronics, there's the batteries, there's the utilities that I wanted to put in, and then I used a 2-scale metric to figure out where everything was going to go. Next was wiring diagram rough draft. This is a hodgepodge of positives and negatives all running everywhere. My goal here was just to try to figure out a general framework for how I wanted things to go. Connectors, bus bars, master switches. I wasn't sure what to do, how many gangs to use, what size amps to use. So I just kind of figured that out on this piece of paper and kind of brain dumped on it, which is why it looks like a mess. Now we're making progress. I broke all the separate components into their each individual circuits. I made them each have their own color, and I started putting together what I wanted, where I wanted it, and figuring out how I was going to work it. You can see here the problem was going to be that I had lots of circuits coming back into this panel. So this is where I consulted my stepdad Kim, master electrician, and got his feedback. With his feedback, I was able to clean this diagram up, as you can see. He recommended using 6-to-1 bus bars on both ends, as well as a 4-to-1 bus bar between my master switch and my my gang panel. So we have a let's work outside to in. So you have 16 gauge wire and very low amperage from most of these lights, not the LED, but the kick lights, the radio, the head unit, the LED strips, the builds, they all run low voltage. So they all had 16 or 18 gauge wire coming out. As those ran into the bus bar, I tied them off to the bus bar. Running back from the bus bar to the gang panel, I had 14 gauge. Running from the gang to the bus bar here was 14 gauge as well. Then I had 10 gauge wire running from the battery to the master and the master to the bus bar. So it allowed for increased amperage as it went back to the battery. That's working exceptionally well. Kim also suggested that I add a 30 amp inline fuse, which I did. We ran mostly 15 amps in the gang panel, but we did change one 20 amp. The 20 amp is going to be to the front LED and nav, because that's a big light and it takes more voltage. So it's got 14 gauge that came with it running off of it that goes into this, and then has the 14 gauge running back to the bus bar with a 20 amp fuse. So I don't know if that's 100% correct, but it's how I did it, and it's working great so far. Everything is clean. The wires look good where they're at, and I'm not tripping over them. And we'll go to the boat and I'll show you how it's turning out so far. This is the battery running all my accessories. I have a separate starting battery. It's a 100 amp hour MillerTech lithium battery. You can see that the terminals are very clean. I only have the 2 negatives from the bus bars coming back to it. One of the bus bars happens to be right there, but it allows me to keep the battery itself clean for charging, pulling it in and out if I need to. And I only have the one positive. That one positive goes to a 30 amp fuse, which then goes to my master switch. The master switch is right there. Turn it on and off very easy. No accidental tripping with that type of toggle switch. From the master switch, it runs through that corrugated tubing and back to my 6-gang panel here. The divider protects the panel from guns and stuff sliding in, but I left it a little open so I can get to it. I also labeled everything, so if I ever have to fix it on the water, I know what I'm working with. There's the 6-gang panel. It works great, it's tucked in. Now back here it gets a little messy because there's a lot of wires, as you can see, running back to the negative bus bar back there. But I'd rather have all those wires back there out of the way than up in the battery where I need to work. I intentionally left them exposed so I could get to them if needed. The starting battery is a simple Duracell. Gives me the cold cranking amps I need. Ignore the ducks, I'm getting ready for early season teal. As I said, the front light requires a little more amperage. So that one's got a bigger wire running through it. Comes through there. I did wire loom on one, corrugated on the other, so I know which is which. It comes all the way back in, goes in through the 2 holes here, connects to the bus bar. The positive keeps going on that corrugated tubing against the hull and goes back to the switch panel. For the front of the boat, I went with a Southern Light LED. I used a Riveton threaded riveter to put threads in the front of the boat. That has proven pretty well. It's got cranked on a couple times by kids running around it and jumping. It's held up great. The construction is wonderful. Highly recommend it. It's done fantastic for us so far. Ignore the wires that you saw out and about. I'm putting a new transducer on. I'm going to run it over the side, tuck it back in behind here, and run it down the hull, back out to a hole on the other side of this bench for the Garmin. So ignore that. That's just me having to adjust some things to make the boat run the way I want it. Last thing we'll do is run through the items I use. So I use the Ancor marine grade wire. This is the 10 gauge, which is what I used from the battery to the master switch, but I had 10, 12, 14, 16 and used that, and they made good stuff. I had no qualms with it. For stripping them, I highly recommend a good little stripper tool. It's cheap on Amazon and it saves you saves just a few, 30 seconds per, and you don't end up nicking the wires unless you're like a master electrician. Wire loom was off of Amazon. Worked great. It's hold up. I actually chose the loom too with the yellow because it actually makes it look like marsh grass with the black loom over the yellow. I used the heat shrink connectors over all my connections. You got to have a heat gun, one that gets pretty hot. These work great. I have 0 complaints about it outside of me being dumb and putting the wrong size on occasionally. But they worked really well, and even then I just took a bigger one over it, so it worked fine. Heat shrink connectors was also imperative. It helped with getting good connections and not having to redo anything. So heat shrink stuff was definitely the way to go. These were amazing. These are solder seal connectors. As you heat them up, you got to have a real hot gun, a real hot heat gun. But as they heat up, there's some soldering in there that actually liquefies and covers both sides of the connection. So I am just so thankful I used these because every connection was pure, perfect, and it was super easy to use and really strong. As far as attaching the one thing I wish I did different, as far as attaching the wires to the hull, I just used cable clamps, these plastic ones, and the rivets would break them occasionally. So as they break and I replace them, I'm going to switch over to the bendable aluminum type ones that have a rubber coating on them. These worked, but like I said, depending on where it was and how tight the rivet was going to be, the rivet would actually break the plastic. So I would do this a little differently if I was going to do it over again, and I would use the bendable metal ones that I'm going to use as these start breaking. That's really it for the items I used. If you guys have any questions about other stuff, please leave a comment. I'm more than happy to answer it for you. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Next video is going to be the last video, which is going to be the final tour of the boat. Just some stuff the kids and I shot, and some footage. Hopefully get out early in the morning before the sun comes up and show you the lights in full action. Try to get some camera set up back in the back, Marsh, so you can see how you can take some of these really old Jon boats over down logs and through, dead blow and all that. So stay tuned, guys. Thanks for watching. Cheers.